before I do this presentation, I've just remembered that I need to do this. Okay, so this is kind of like a walkthrough of a patch that I've been playing out at a few shows recently, which is for kind of doing classic jungle. Loads of breaks, loads of samples, loads of effects, stuff being triggered, and I thought I would just go through it. I'm thinking of playing a couple more shows with it. I've got a show this Friday the 13th, unlucky for some, especially if you're coming to my show. And then maybe after that I might put it to bed and move on to something else. Although I do quite like playing around with breaks, especially modular. So basically I'll take you through it. Everything is kind of going into this veils here. So I've kind of got 4 elements. And the first element, which is being triggered by gate 1 on the varigate, is this disting here, which is kind of full at the moment with bass sounds like kick bass, kind of bass drops, which is kind of giving me that kind of classic rave sub bass, which pretty much just goes straight into the first VCA on Veils. The second gate here is triggering the third disting here, which is loaded up with drum breaks, 1 bar loop drum breaks that are on the clocked audio algorithm, and the clock is coming from the varigate out into this mult where everything that needs to be clocked is coming out of here, including the 4ms delay and a few other things. And then so the disting with the brakes on comes out, I think, into channel B on the 4ms delay, where I'm using either the pressure points or the varigate or the laddic random to turn infinite hold on and off to do kind of beat repeaty type things to just the brakes. I've also got the 4ms set so that when you send CV into the delay feed, it doesn't send CV to the delay feed, instead it sends it to the dry wet mix. So when I send it a gate, hold comes on, dry wet goes up, and it loops over and over and over, which is pretty cool. And then that, I think, goes into channel 2 or VCA 2 on the Veils. Although I was thinking for a little while of running it via the clouds, but I've actually put clouds at the end of the chain, but I'm not certain on that yet. So yeah, what have we got next? We've got, why don't I play it and maybe mute some parts here. I'll just unplug this. So here we've got the 4ms sampler, which is brilliant. Playing some pads and some sort of pitched up vocal sounds. I can sort of just change them around here. That is going to the modular mix with the strength CV being triggered by, I think, either a channel on the varigate, or I think it's this one here. No. This one here. Anyway, so basically what that does is that it gives me a quick little send of sound, but I can actually also kind of do that here. Some classic pads and ravey vocals. That's going into the disting in the middle, which is on the clocked delay, and the clock is coming from the clock divider here, which is coming from the clock from the mult. So that is some classic rave, and these are just looping these sounds, and I can just sort of go to a new sound here. But the idea is that if I don't want to do that manually, I can plug in this gate into this VCA here, the modular mix, and then it'll kind of just trigger random little bits. So that is, stop that a second, so that is going into Veils number 3, and Veils number 4 is that is maths, which is doing a cycle into the woggle bug, which is sending a stepped sort of sample and hold signal out into braids with the quantizer on, so I can kind of do melodic ideas although it might not play right as it. Oh, there we go. So if I change the sort of curve on maths, I get like different melodies. Play around with that. Some squelch, and then that comes out into the final channel on Veils, and then the output of Veils. So if you know Veils, that you'll know that the all the outputs can either come out individually or they all get summed down at the end. So I've got the sum here, which I've split in two. And the yellow one is going into this modular mix here, which is coming out into the verb. So basically what I've done here is I've created sort of like a makeshift kind of auxiliary send of the master signal. So the whole signal is coming out, being split, and one part of it is going into this little bus, into the verb, back out into this unity mixer, which also has the output of clouds, and the first, well, or rather the other split here from the end of Veils goes into clouds. So the whole mix is going into clouds. I'm not entirely sure I want that yet. I think maybe I've done that wrong, and actually the final output needs to go via that split so that the cloud signal will also get sent into the auxiliary for the verb, and I haven't done that, so I screwed up there. And then the output of that unity mixer, which is the verb and the whole mix, is coming out into channel A on the 4ms delay, which is doing the same thing as this one but on the whole mix. So I can either do a beat repeat of the whole mix, or I can grab like a 1-bar loop or a 2-bar loop, I think, and it'll loop the whole mix. I'm considering running that out into the MMG so that I can kind of do, because you can switch very easily between high pass and low pass here. So with a flick of a knob, or perhaps from pressure points, I could do like a high pass sweep or a low pass sweep of the whole mix, which is kind of fun when playing live in that. And that is it. And then it all goes, that comes out into Rosie and then out into the outside world. So, and this is kind of what it sounds like. Oh, and a couple of other things. The looping of the signal is done with some more stack cables here. So the stack cables from here are running into the hold, and then also into the CV to do the infinite looping, and then there's another one going into doing a similar thing in clouds with the freeze, and then into the blend mode, so that the whole thing, the dry signal gets cut off and then the wet signal just loops. And this is kind of what it sounds like. Oh, hang on, that's braids. Let's turn braids down for a minute. And so because I'm using the variegate, I can kind of just bring parts in and out. And so also the just one more thing. I'm also using, what am I using here? The noise outputs from the Wogglebug into the sample selection of the bass and the breaks. So I'm kind of using random noise to choose sounds, and then those sounds won't sound, as it were. They won't play until the next trigger comes in, which is kind of nice. So everything is kind of nicely locked and kind of works. Let's have a listen. Change like some pads and the vocal sounds to something else. Okay, let's bring the bass in. You won't hear it though because it's my iPhone mic. And let's try the beat repeat on the drums. I think the reverse, so there's a reverse. The reverse is coming from the Ladic random here, so this is receiving a clock from somewhere, I think from the clock divider, and then it's sending a random gate out into the reverse on here so that it'll randomly reverse bits. You can change that to time. Now let's just turn that off for a second. Let's bring in the beat repeat on the whole mix. Oh, it's gone a little bit out of time. I'm not sure about the timing on this thing yet. Let's bring in the clouds freezing. The size on clouds I've got running from a maths channel, which I need to just turn on. So this is kind of this is actually really for when it's the most kind of mental part of the patch. Like I can actually not use these and instead use say the pressure points. So if I've unplugged the wrong one. So if I take like this into the pressure points here, then I can loop the whole mix just by pressing on the pressure points. Oh, hang on, let me just put it down to something like 1/6. Let's try like really fast. There we go. Put that into 1/6 again. Yeah, and I can do the same with the clouds. Let's put clouds into... And I'm also using another channel from the Laddick Random here to just bring in the mix on the Earthbird. So yeah, that's kind of it really. I've sort of just been playing around with that. It takes a little while to patch together, but I kind of like it. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing it forever, but the amount of sampling options on the distings is really, really good. In some ways, a little bit more than this. I mean, this has got everything's just kind of there in front of you, and also it's quite nice to just sort of come out of the send on the Rosie here into the record and just, whoa, what did I just do? Start recording into this straight away and record an entire jam, which is just so quick. I quite like how the when you back off the length, you kind of get a little amp envelope on the sample, which is really nice. You can just sort of put in like a huge sound that's kind of like an evolving drone, and then back it off and hit play, and you can kind of have like a little percussive sound, move around the start position, change the tone of it a little bit. So I think for doing quite a lot with few sounds, this is really great. But I think for doing very little with loads and loads of sounds, I'd say that these really win. I've got I think you can have like 64 sounds in a playlist, and you can have like a playlist per algorithm. So I've got all my drum breaks on algorithm I2, but if I move to a different algorithm, I could have a different playlist of different samples doing different types of things. They could loop each like sound in a playlist can have its own attributes. So if I wanted to have like only one sound looping in the playlist, I can just put that in the text file. With this, it doesn't really work like that. It's kind of global. Any sort of control that you have here applies to all the sounds in the back, which is kind of good as well. So yeah, that's it. That's my old school jungle modular patch. Hope you enjoyed that.